Howdy folks, this is BelGeode, this is Microsoft Flight Simulator, and this is a test, otherwise known as one of my chill vids. Yay! So we got multiple things going on today. And of course the first and most obvious of which is this behemoth right here. Yeah! So, as you no doubt know, we did have a small update where we got a new city update for a portion of Germany, and with it also came the local legends 15. I believe it's 15. I don't think it's 16. This is the local legends 15. This is the Dornier Do-31, which is like a late 1950s, early 1960s vintage aircraft that was actually an experimental aircraft. It was basically, I guess you would say, like a feasibility study during the Cold War by the West Germans, because remember, after World War II, Germany got split up into East and West. And the West Germans were concerned that the Soviet bloc at the time might want to invade or destroy their runways and so on and so forth. So they came up with this wacky and brilliant idea of strapping two Rolls Royce Pegasus engines on a transport bird. You can see the little ducts there on the side there. This is the same engine that's in the Harrier, if you're familiar with the I guess the Harrier GR1 or the AV-8B Harrier as the Marines have come to know it. But yeah, two of those engines strapped to this bird. And to make things even better, these wingtip pods that I'm looking at here, each one of those pods has 4 vertically stacked engines. You see where I'm going with this here? So no, it's not a helicopter, but it's got all the trappings of a VTOL aircraft. And the whole idea behind it was if the Soviet bloc did, in fact, destroy all the West German airports, runways, or whatever, they could hide these suckers, like, in farmlands and parking lots and places like that, and they could still deploy troops because of the fact that this thing had VTOL capability. But here's a catch, of course. Only 3 of them were ever made. And I think one of them, they said, disappeared. Don't ask me what that means, disappeared. I can only assume it crashed, but yeah, it's like lost forever to history. So this one, I'm not sure if this one is a fictional livery or if this would have been like one of the production liveries that they had. But suffice to say, this is what this bird was like. See, look at this. We've got like nozzles in the back here that eject like high pressure air up and down to help you with pitch, because of course when you're in VTOL mode your wings and your control surfaces are essentially useless. And then you've got those 8 engines, 4 per wing pod there, and you got the Pegasus there. So yeah, you can pretty much fly this thing like a Harrier on steroids. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Will I be able to fly this thing like a Harrier on steroids? Well, that's the whole point of this video here. I want to see just how intuitive it's going to be with me using virtual reality. I am still in the Reverb G2, but I am seriously considering the new Pimax Crystal Light. In fact, I just did the pre-order for it this morning, which was like 30 bucks. It's a refundable pre-order if I decide to change my mind down the road. But yeah, huge shout out to Steve, VR Flight Sim guy, for that one, for giving me the heads up on that VR headset. So that may be my new VR headset for whenever Windows or Microsoft decide to brick this Reverb G2. But yeah, where are we? We are in the Bora Bora area. I say that because I know that we are on an island close to Bora Bora. We're going to be flying to Bora Bora to check out Clifford's scenery in Bora Bora. But yeah, I forgot exactly which island I'm on. It'll show up on the screen. I always put it in the bottom right corner in case you haven't figured by now. I love the fact that the little compressor blades are spinning there. That's cool. They're just windmilling. So yeah, very strange bird. Very awesome bird. I have had a little bit of practice flights with it just to kind of get my bearings on how things work. It is really unusual, and it's going to be one of those RTFM things. You got to read the manual. And just to hit on that a second, in order to locate the manual for this bird, since you can get it on the InSim marketplace, when it downloads, you find your Microsoft Flight Simulator folder, and inside of that, you're going to look for the official folder, not the community folder, but the one that says official. And inside that, you're going to look for the one that has the Dornier Do-31. Inside of that is going to be a folder marked resources, and then of course inside resources is going to be the manual and checklist. Highly recommend you read it because there are some weird control scheme configurations that you're going to have to do, which I'll get into once we get into the cockpit. But as is typical for me, I like to go through the external static cameras just to see what they have given us because I use those for cinematic views. So let's get out a drone cam here and we'll check it out. So our first camera is facing back. I'm not a huge fan of these views, but I guess it would be cool if I want to make sure I'm not going to smack something while I'm going backwards vertically. You can go backwards vertically. Anything the Harrier can do, this thing can do. Except, of course, shoot things down. Next camera is above, looking down, so you got a nice view of the control surfaces there. You got your ailerons, you got your flaps, and all that good jazz. And then, of course, the Pegasus engine and the little wingtip pods there. Same view, opposite direction. So there you go. You can see the starboard side now. Looks pretty cool. I gotta say, they really did well on these textures. These textures look really sharp. This is my favorite livery. It comes with several different liveries, but this one is my favorite. Then, of course, the BelGeode landing cam. You can't have an aircraft without the BelGeode landing cam. How else am I going to be able to show off the landing gear going up and down? So yeah, awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. I love it. The ramp is down, which is what's above my head right there. We'll get into the ramp in a second. Another view of the Pegasus engines. I imagine with the exhaust going, you're probably not going to see anything but heat blur on this view, but it's still pretty cool, and you can see the gear as well. And then we have the opposite view, so you're looking from the front back on the other engine, which is also pretty cool. I just love that windmilling compressor blade too. That's so neat. Yes, the other view that I will more than likely use, which is the behind the bird view. I kind of wish this was a little bit further back because I have to actually move my head to see all of the aircraft, but you can get a good view of the vertical thrust nozzles that are used for pitch while you're in VTOL. And then we've got little fork-tailed, I'm assuming, pitot tubes there on the tailplane. Pretty nice stuff. Look at the reflection of the tail in the elevator here. That's pretty neat. I love that stuff. I love that stuff. And we got another view of the gear. So there we go. Pretty stock standard stuff. Of the lot, there's only the two views that I think I would use. This is not one of those. The BelGeode landing cam and the behind the bird view, I think, are the only ones that I would use. But you never know. I might switch to this in flight as long as we're on autopilot, so that way I don't lose control of the aircraft, because that's a big problem when you're flying helicopters. And then back to this view, which is the original view. So we're going to put it to BelGeode landing cam for now, and we're going to hop inside the cockpit. Okay, so let me address the elephant outside the room here. You may notice that it is inclement weather, and usually when I do these videos, I try to set what I consider standard custom weather configurations. So I'll have it partly cloudy where, we've got a bit of moisture in the air, but it's not raining. We're not doing IFR flying or anything like that. Today, I'm doing something different. What am I doing? I am currently running the brand new Active Sky for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, for those of you who are very used to the channel or who've been here for a long time, you know me. I am a huge fan of Active Sky. I've used Active Sky for FSX, for P3D, V3, V4, even V5. as well as X-Plane 11. I didn't get it for X-Plane 12 because honestly I'm not even sure if it's out for X-Plane 12. It might be. But as soon as I found out that they finally were able to get Microsoft Flight Simulator on board, yeah, I love it. Now, this video is probably going to be fairly long because I've got to go through the whole startup sequence and fly us to Bora Bora and, of course, check out Clifford's scenery. So I'm going to go light on Active Sky, but I will say this. If you have used Active Sky before, if you're familiar with the interface, if you're familiar with how it works, it's the same thing. It uses the FS Connect, it connects to the sim, it recognizes when the sim is on, it'll show you a map of where you are. You can link your flight plan to it, so it'll actually show where you are going, provided of course you have a flight plan put in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It downloads the METAR, you can set it for live weather, which is what it's currently set to, so presumably this is exactly what it's like close to Bora Bora today, the date that I'm recording this, which I believe is April 20th. Happy 420 to those of you who celebrate. I do not, but, you know, you have fun with that. But yeah, not only can you do the live weather, but you can also do historic weather, which should be a big deal for those of you who like to fly into hurricanes and stuff like that. You can actually put in the date of a hurricane, go find where it would have been at that time in the past, and it will realistically depict what that hurricane was like, so you can go fly through it and all of that stuff. That, I think, is probably the coolest thing that Active Sky has brought to the table. And it's not a new thing, it's something that they've always had in every Active Sky product that they've done for at least the last 20 or so years. I don't know how long back to go. I guess to FSX days, so yeah, that's probably around right. But yes, that has been their claim to fame. They've brought all of those features back, and it's amazing. Now, the turbulence can get a little bit much, so don't be too surprised if I'm all over the sky in this thing. So we're just going to throw that out there from right now. But suffice to say, it is so worth it as far as I'm concerned. I do not know if the Active Sky API will allow for aircraft developers to utilize like weather radar and so on, but considering the fact that I'm in a 60s vintage aircraft, do you seriously think we've got weather radar in here? Well, lucky we've got that big old computer back there. So yeah, there is that. All right. We do, however, have this nifty little EFB, as they call it. And right now it's on the settings page. You probably can't see it all that clearly. I might be able to zoom in the VR headset. There we go. Now maybe you can see it a little better. So the options are for the ramp to raise and lower it. So we're going to go ahead and raise the ramp. And that'll close the back ramp. And we could put the little nose cone pitot tube on, which will make this thing look like a Flash Gordon spaceship, as I've seen it commonly referred to. And honestly, that's the first thing I thought as well. And of course, we have the user manual that we can click up. But if we do that, the only thing it does is it shows you this page, which brings us to our controls. Please note, to perform a vertical takeoff or landing, you will need to assign throttle axis 3 to your device control options to control the vertical lift engines. For more details and explanation of the system, see the manual. There you go. They said it, not I. All right. So what did I do with my Virpil controls? So my standard throttle settings, since I have the two throttles, those are the Pegasus engines that you see moving right there. So that's our regular conventional throttle. But of course, since a Pegasus engine also has the ability to swivel, I set that to my Virpil flap control. Now, it's not going to move right now because the vertical mode is off. But it's that third lever that you're seeing on the far right there that's going to be activating. And then, of course, there's these vertical levers here that will move in tandem with the other levers when you're in vertical mode, when you're in VTOL mode. So there's a lot to pay attention to in this aircraft. It's nuts. It's really nuts how they were able to put this all together in the 60s. Oh, look, it stopped raining. Wonderful. All right, I am going to set this to the map. And the only complaint that I have kind of sort of lodged with Inibuilds is I kind of wish I could like click maybe right here and have the map automatically move itself to perhaps right here or something like that. Somewhere where it's a bit out of the way, but I can see it a lot easier just doing this instead of having to do this in VR, because that's not going to work for me. But we can cheat a little bit. I can pull up the VFR map. And what can I do with the VFR map, you ask? Well, I can put it exactly where I'm talking about, right there. So you see our flight plan, we can zoom it out. So we've got to pass one island there before we actually get to Bora Bora. So there you go. That's our flight plan for today. We'll just leave that there. However, you'll be happy to know that we do have a checklist. It's a fairly extensive checklist, so I'm hoping I don't mess this up. I've only done a couple of flight tests with this thing. There's a lot to go over. All right, so the battery, we can assume it's off. We know it's off. Generators are off, yes. External lights are all off. Conventional throttles are idle. Vertical engine throttle is also idle. Engine start cover, we want to open that. Engine start cover is this box back there. You'll see the engine start switches back there. I'll go over everything as we go through it here. So that's open. We want to make sure that the ignition or the starter switches are all off. They are. As long as they're pointing away from us, they're off. So we're going to go ahead and close the cover. It's a little tricky in VR to reach the switches inside. Sometimes I accidentally end up moving the cover again, which, you know, I could bind them to some of the switches that I have on my Virpil, but considering the fact that I had to make a whole new control profile for this bird specifically, I didn't want to add too many switches that I'm not familiar with. Fuel pump switch is off, parking brake is on. Okay, so our parking brake is this guy right here. These are all our fuel pump switches. Just a word of warning. When you're in conventional mode, you've got pretty good range. I would say roughly around 900 or so miles, nautical miles. The moment you switch it into VTOL and those wingtip pods come alive, those engines and wingtip pods, you're going to start drinking gas like it's going out of style. Keep an eye on your fuel quantity gauges at the bottom here, because they will run out really quick if you continuously stay in VTOL mode. All right, so that is it for that page. So we're going to go to the engine start page. First, we want our battery on, and I'll use the little eyeball thingy to kind of help us out there, so that way you know. All right, this is our battery switch up here, so we're going to click that. You hear that, right? It's all coming to life, baby. I love it. I don't know what the West Germans were thinking when they came up with this thing. It's a brilliant idea, but by the same token, it's such a freaking monster. All right, beacon, I have a switch for that, so I can turn that on. Yep, you can see the switch just moved, so the beacon is now on. Typically, when I do that, I also turn my navigation lights on. So there we go, beacon and nav are on. I don't know why. I don't even know if people do that in real life. That's just a habit for me. Engine start cover open. So here we go, back to this. Bam. All right, now comes the fun part. We're going to need the engine master switch, which is the outmost switch, the ignition, which is right next to it, and then the starter. Once the engine 1 N2 is above 18%, which if you look at our gauges here, the N2 is going to be this gauge, I believe. I think this is the N1. Once that gets up to about 18, we are going to hit the master fuel switch for engine 1, which is going to be this bad boy right here. That's our master fuel switch. We'll turn on all the other tanks after we get the two main engines up. All right, so we will monitor the gas temperature, turn off the starter once everything is in order, and then we'll get ready for number 2. So to save a little bit of time, I'm just going to go ahead and click through all of these. So remember, our order is going to be master, ignition, starter, so we're working from outside in. After 18%, we want the fuel on. Make sure the EGT is in range, then turn the starter off once we are successful and monitor the gauges. And then we'll do the same thing for engine 2. All right. Now I've got to physically move myself around in VR here. We'll get to this panel a little bit later. This is going to be for our autopilot and all of that, and some of the nifty little assists that they have, which you might need. Okay, so engine 1, which is on the left side. So we want engine 1 master on, ignition on, and then the starter switch, we're going to flip you on. You see what I mean about it switching automatically to the cover? So here's our engine 1 gauge. We're going to watch. It's at 10. It's moving up to 20. Right about there is good. Fuel switch can come on now. You can see the temperature's coming up, so we've definitely got fuel. We got a spark. N1 is coming up. We are good to go. Now, it doesn't actually say when we should turn off the starter, but I would assume once the N2 gets into the green arc, we're pretty much good for turning off the engine start. And then we can work on engine 2, which is going to be the exact same process. There we go. We're good to go. So we'll turn off the starter for engine 1, and we'll start engine 2. So we want engine 2 master, engine 2 ignition, engine 2 starter. And we go through the same process here. So you can see the RPMs are good there. Just waiting for N2 to come up. Hovering over the right fuel cutoff switch. We're right there, so you can come on now. And we'll just wait for that to come up. Meanwhile, we'll check off our checklist because we're already done with all of that stuff. So you, check. And you, check. It doesn't auto-sequence through this. I can set the assists on so that way it will, but I prefer to have them off because you know me, I get forgetful. So yeah, I want to make sure that I'm checking off what I need to check off. Alright, so we're done with that. The last thing is going to be to close the engine starter cover after we turn off number 2 starter. Number 2 engine looks good. Number 2 starter off. Close the cover. We're good to go. So now we are pretty much set for a conventional takeoff, which more than likely is what I'm going to do. But first we need to make sure everything else is up and running. So after engine checklist, generators 1, 2, and 3, 4 on. Where are our generators, you ask? Well, right up there. So we're going to want to make sure we go clicky. Can I clicky? Clicky, yes. Clicky. And 2 more clickies, please. There we go, good to go. So those are now on. Okay. Engine starter cover open. Confirm that the switches are closed. Well, I already did that, so we're good. All the fuel pump switches can now come on. So here we go. These are all them. Bam. Bam. You'll notice the red lights come on for each one that we're clicking. All right, so what we've done here is we've engaged all the fuel tanks, all the fuel pumps, and we've also made it so that when we're ready to turn on our VTOL engine, which is going to be with this switch here, they will in fact come on. Beacon is on. Oh, check that the beacon is on. Okay, well, I guess we can do that. We'll have to go outside to do that, though. Let's do that. Yep, certainly does look like the beacon light is on to me. Okay, I'm fine with that. Man, look how wonderful this day became. It really brightened up, didn't it? I love it. I love it. Okay, so vertical engine startup procedure. We're not going to worry about that just yet, but just to go through it really quickly. Obviously, we need to make sure that our main engines are on. Copilot vertical engine control is on. So that is this right here. That's our main switch. This light here will go green, which indicates it is on. And at that point in time, the engines are going to spool up. So all these gauges you see, this bank of 16 gauges here, those are for the vertical engines. So I'm assuming 2 per gauge because it's 8 engines total. Or maybe 1 per gauge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, yeah, that would be correct. 10 engines on this thing. Can you believe it? That's just nuts. All right, but yeah, we would make sure that all of that is on, and Copilot assist mode. So let's talk about that really quick. And yes, I realize you came to watch me fly, but I haven't done any flying yet, but I feel like I would be doing a disservice to this aircraft if I didn't show you all of this stuff. So these switches here, you see that one says Copilot Hover Assist. Does exactly what it says on the tin. If you decide you want to hover for a bit, you will activate that, but make sure you're within the parameters, so within the right altitude, within the right speed limitations, and so on and so forth. Stoval Assist. If you want to do a short takeoff or vertical landing, you got to put that switch on. But again, make sure you're within the parameters, otherwise it'll flip itself off. Copilot Boundary Mode is what I like to call the idiot mode. I'm just going to leave a dramatic pause right there. If you find yourself like going out of flight parameters while you're flying this thing, turn that on. It'll help you fly straight. Now there are other things that we can do. If we look over here, there's another switch that says Copilot Vertical Landing Assist. We may or may not use that switch depending on how much I bollocks this up on the way in. And then all of these switches back here are going to be for our autopilot. So we're going to want the yaw power, the pitch power, the roll power, and the damper power before we can activate the actual autopilot switches, which I do have on my Verpal. Last thing is the flaps lever. Now, since I'm using my physical flaps lever for the vertical engine nozzle controls, I actually have that to a switch on my Verpal. And we're going to take off conventionally, so we're going to set that to 15 flaps. All right, everything good. Ramp is closed. I kind of wish there was a passenger variant, but I get it. It's an experimental aircraft. They never actually made it to production. I'm sure that we could probably imagine what it would have been like if it would have ended up being a full-on military transport or even a civilian airliner type, but obviously that never happened. All right, so taxi out procedure, get taxi clearance, brake pedals press and check, all the standard stuff there. I'm pretty sure we're good with all of that. ATC clearance, formation lights on, transponder on alt, and landing lights on. You know what? Let me check to see where my transponder even is. Oh, well, that makes sense. Okay. And then, of course, all our lights are up that way there. So, all right, we know what to do. We know what to do. We are good. Okay, so how about we do some flying and some shenanigans, huh? So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the checklist. So glad that I put that on a button on my Verpal, so now I don't have to like open up the menu in VR and everything. Now, one very important thing about this bird that you're going to notice early, it has a lot of power. The thrust to weight ratio on this thing is better than most fighter jets. It's like 1.2 or something ridiculous like that. This thing has so much thrust. It's insane. And it needs to have it because some of that thrust is getting diverted to those vertical engines there. So yeah, it's needed. All right, Raiatea ground. Oh, is that where we are? We're at Raiatea. Okay. Hey. Raiatea ground, we would like to depart straight out, please.
Raiatea ground, Dornier Delta Oscar, Tree 1 request taxi for takeoff departing straight out.
Dornier Delta Oscar, Tree 1 taxi to and hold short of runway 07 using taxiway.
Okay.
Contact tower on 118.5 when ready.
118.5, okay, got it.
Taxiing hold short runway 07 via taxiway Dornier Delta Oscar, Tree 1.
Just a little tip regarding the radios and active sky. There is an ATIS frequency that you can tune. I believe it is 122.0. If you tune that, active sky will actually give you an ATIS, and it's kind of cool because they have different dialects, different voices in there. So depending on where in the world you are, you'll actually hear different types of voices. There are other frequencies that you can dial in that'll give you like your destination. I want to say it might be 122.05 or maybe it's 122.10. One of those two will give you your destination ATIS. So you can actually listen to that as you're en route to your destination, just to kind of get an idea of what the conditions are going to be like when you land. All right, let me just do a quick controls check here. So rudder / tiller. The tiller also operates the nacelles. So those vertical engines can actually pivot when you use the tiller, and that is how you get your yaw capabilities in VTOL. Alright, so ailerons, elevators, we're good to go. Parking brake off, and you're going to notice, because this thing has so much thrust, we almost immediately start moving with just the slightest touch. Probably check my brakes too, right? I don't want to hit either of these H125s here. Yeah, this is going to get squirrely. We're going to assume that our pods are tall enough so that way we don't have to worry about it. Windsock is telling us we need to be on that end of the runway, and here I go going off the taxiway. Whew! Craziness, man. Look at the rain off in the distance, too. That's just nuts. Alright, we're going to park it here. Put our parking brakes on. Get our landing lights on. You can see the landing lights flip out under the bottom of the wingtip nacelles there. Alright, tower. Request takeoff clearance, please.
Rayatea Tower, Dornier Delta Oscar, tree 1 ready for departing straight out at runway 07.
Dornier Delta Oscar, tree 11079er at 15. Departing straight out approved. Cleared for takeoff runway 07.
Okay.
Cleared for takeoff runway 07 Dornier Delta Oscar, tree 1.
Parking brakes are off. Throttle coming up a little bit there. You can see I do not have Kara with me today. Of course, to be honest with you, Kara is not modeled in the interior of this bird. More developers need to do that. I love when developers add the co-pilot in there. At least make it as an option for us VR users that actually do like to see somebody in the seat next to us. It's just one of those cool factor things that I personally enjoy. Not saying you actually have to do it, but it's nice to have. Alright, but we may have a dilemma here, folks. And I know you're asking, what's the problem now, Bell? Well, this thing is massive, and its ground turn radius is not that great. And as you can see, this runway is not that big. So yeah, this could get real interesting here. So I'm going to go all the way over here. I'm probably knocking out these runway lights here. And we're going to give it full right pedal. Please do not let me go in the water. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. All right. Full left pedal all the way left. As far left as I can get it. Love taps on the brakes. A little bit of throttle. I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up in the grass on that side, but that's okay. Now you may wonder, how does this thing handle, like speed-wise takeoff? What's your takeoff distance going to be like, and so on? It's a jet. It's got 2 jet engines on there. Yeah, they're Pegasus Harrier engines, but this thing is pretty sprightly. Remember, you can do a STOVL takeoff. We're going to do a conventional one. So we're going to be looking for roughly about 150 or 156. I forget exactly which. But yeah, once we get to that airspeed, we're going to lift off. And to help us, I'm even going to trim us back a little bit here. These are going to be very important. These are our pitch controls and our AOA. So we're going to want to pay attention to those as we are flying, particularly once we start getting into the VTOL regime. But with all that having been said, I hope you are all ready. Let me just switch this here to alt. Okay, we're good to go. All right. You know what it's time for, folks. Brakes down, throttles up. So we want to get her up to about 80% RPM. Looking good, looking good. That's on the N1 gauge, the second from the top. I'm going to get the parking brakes off. I do have our handbrakes on. And let's give her full power. There we go. Airspeed's alive. 60 knots. 80 knots. 100 knots. Come on, baby. I know you can do this. 120 knots. I'm going to start trimming us back here a little. There we go. Light pressure on the stick. 150 knots. We are up and out of here. Positive rate. Gear up. Outstanding. And of course, Microsoft Flight Simulator has to pause for a second there. Nice. Nice. Always got to kill my buzz, right? Sheesh. So there we go. Look at that. Raiatea. I think that's what it's called. And we got out just in time because it looks like more weather is moving in, which is of course going to be nasty, but it is what it is. I'm going to head this away. And now we can pretty much just use trim controls to keep this thing where we would like to have it. So we're going to keep an eye on that pitch gauge there and make sure that we are climbing out as we would like. Now, I haven't decided on what our cruise altitude is going to be as of yet.
Delta Oscar 31 leaving my airspace frequency change approved.
Okay, thank you. But I have decided that we're going to turn this away. So I'm going to pitch us down a little.
Raiatea Tower, Dornier, Delta Oscar, Tree 1 frequency change.
And I'm going to go to the outside and see if I can get a good cinematic shot here for our title. If you let her, she will climb like a rocket ship. We can get roughly about 300 knots out of this puppy. It's insane. It's just awesome. I love this thing. All right, clearly I do not have like my flight director or anything on, but I'm going to go ahead and set up our autopilot really quick. And we're going to turn slightly to the left here. So I'm trimming us down. I want to stay just over these cloud tops here. There's not a whole heck of a lot of weather going on around here, but obviously low-level clouds is going to equal rain, so we'll keep an eye on that. All right, let's get our switches on for our autopilot. So damper, and everything else. You just hit one switch and all of them come on. Beautiful, beautiful. We also want to make sure our flight director is on. So flight director on, autopilot, altitude hold is on. And let's see what she does here. We'll also get the nav hold on and see if that does anything. She's quite sprightly. She really is. You can see she's coming down nicely. If you look at the switches back here, you'll see I've got the altitude on and the nav hold or radio navigation. Heading hold is currently off. So yeah, she's practically flying herself right now. Now, as far as getting us on course, well, that's another story. So far, I don't seem to be having much luck with that. But what we can do is we can switch it from nav hold to heading hold. So let me do that real quick here. There we go. Heading hold is now on, which I can then adjust on my HSI. So you can see the little heading bug is moving there. And we're just about here. We're at Bora Bora already. That's it, right there. So naturally, of course, we're probably going to want to come down because, as you can see, we're kind of up there. We're definitely kind of up there right now. Oh, and let me check my altimeter. Yeah, it'd probably help if I set my altimeter, huh? I've gotten so used to not needing to set it because I'm always flying custom weather, so it's always set to 0.92. But yeah, you might want to do that. You might want to check your altimeter when you're using active sky. All right. Obviously, I put a little too much in the way of heading hold here. So we'll stabilize it around heading 220. And yeah, it says we're at about, what is that, 1,300 feet, roughly? Or is that in meters? No, it says feet. It actually does say feet. Okay, well that works. Now here's where the fun starts. We can do shenanigans in this baby. Of course, it means I'm going to have to turn off the autopilot first. So altitude hold off, nav hold off, heading hold off, main autopilot switches off. We're going to go to the outside view and get a little crazy. Now, I know what you're thinking. Can you do a loop in this? Maybe. Possibly. Do you really want to do a loop in a cargo plane, though? I know I don't. It's bad enough that I had to do that half roll there. If we would have had a truck in the back, there, that probably would not have ended well for us. But my whole point doing those little shenanigans here is to get back on the magenta line. I'm going to drink a little water while I fly here. Bob Hoover would be proud of me. And I'm actually using the rudders right now just to kind of straighten us out. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. I love this thing. I love this thing. Now getting into VTOL mode is going to be tricky, and I will admit readily, I am not good at that. Not good at all. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lower our speed, because you can see we were at 300 knots there. And there's the first side of Bora Bora. Now we probably won't get as close a look at Clifford's scenery as I would like, but we're going to try. We are going to try. So the key with getting this thing vertical is, first of all, you've got to manage your pitch. You got to treat it kind of like a helicopter in a way. So the very first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to click this on, since we're below the speed that we need to be, which is roughly about 200-ish. All right, so once that is done, these engines are starting up. In fact, we probably want to put this to start here, and that'll help us with that. So yeah, look at that. We can zoom in just a little there, and you can see Clifford's beautiful scenery add-on. Amazing stuff on the outlying islands, the atoll, as well as on the inboard islands there, or the main island in the center of the atoll. Beautiful stuff. Night and day difference from when this sim first launched. And even with the Oceania add-on in there, this is just incredible. All right, that's our stall warning. So we got to make sure that we are staying over 150-ish when we're doing shenanigans like this. I'm going to see if I can get us into a full-on VTOL, and then we'll try to maneuver around the island in a full-on VTOL. But the first thing you're going to notice is you'll notice the nacelles are currently open. So we're going to quickly go to the outside view and see what that looks like here. I'm keeping our throttle close to idle, and I'm also going to move our nacelles to about the 50 or 60 degree position. So yeah, the Pegasus engines are now fully idled. There's our arrival airport right there. I think it's called Motu Mote. We're going to get the pitch up. We're going to get the gear down. We can also get the flaps down too, so let's go ahead and do that. You can see we're coming down rapidly, so we're definitely going to want a little bit more engine power there. I'm also coming back on the pitch. Alright, let's get our VTOL mode back in here. Okay. Yeah, this thing is wild. This thing is really wild. Controlling it is interesting. You can see we're about to crash right now, too. So once again, I'm pitching up, trying to keep the speed around 150-ish. And each time we move the main throttles here, we're also affecting the vertical throttles here. Probably be easier if I were actually over land, I would think. So let's see if we can swing ourselves around here. Obviously, you don't want to bank too much like this. That could be problematic. So I'm going to give her all the throttle here. We've got the nacelles back pointing back. Gain a little bit more altitude, and we're going to turn ourselves around here. Now I'm actually using a bit of rudder to help influence us. It's funny, trying to do this and tell you exactly what I'm doing at the same time is getting a little bit hectic. But so far so good. We do have our flaps down. So that is helping as well. We've got the rudder working for us because we've got just enough airspeed where that can be a bit effective. There you can see there is Bora Bora. We're going to try and see if we can get ourselves over the actual arrival airport here. And then we'll see if we can get her into a nice hover. I make no guarantees. I've only had like 2 practice flights with this, so I could completely ruin this. But I'm going to give it the old college try anyway. Alright. Let's get the nacelles going here. Okay. So as you throttle down on the main throttle, it's actually moving the nacelles back. So you gotta do that tangle there to keep your speed up. If we put the throttles all the way to idle, then you can see we're dropping out of the sky here. And of course we ease back a little bit on the pitch, let her do her thing. Come off the throttle. It's just nuts. It's absolutely nuts. You think the Harrier is hard to fly? This thing is just absolutely insane. And even though we do have a lot of power to spare, learning how the controls work is in fact the most difficult part of this thing. It's just so weird. See, look at that. We're coming down for a more vertical, or a more conventional landing, I should say. Which is not what I want, actually. I actually want a vertical landing. So we're going to go around. And our VTOL engines are still on, by the way. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put us in full VTOL. Oh, nope. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not. Come on, baby. Pull out of this. Oh, boy. Oh, that's a first on this channel. That is the first time you've ever seen me mess up that badly. But you know what? The show must go on. That is my rule. And I did say I don't promise that I would be able to pull this off. Of course, it probably helps that I put a lot of gas in here, too. We still got our gear out, though, so even though we might have bushes in our mouth right now, we're still alive, somewhat. It's good enough for me, right? All right, I'm going to trim us down a little bit here, because I think with so much trim in there, that's part of what's causing our problems. All right, let's see if we can do this again. Okay. So nozzle's moving. We also have a vertical nozzle there that shows us what's going on. And I'm pulling back on the regular thrust. We're starting to lose pitch, so I'm giving us thrust again. And we're basically just playing with the nozzles here at this point. But there you go. We got a better look at Clifford's scenery. That's always fun. Awesomeness, absolute awesomeness. Alright, I should probably try and see if I can get us back to the airport, so we're going to try and maneuver this puppy around here. So at this point, I've actually got the nozzle setting all the way to the stop, so it's at about, what is that, 97% for a Harrier. I'm trying to keep our pitch and our AOA up, and I'm actually putting in a little rudder, which, as you know, is gently, slowly but surely moving the vertical thrust engines for us. It's not doing a very good job, but we do have some forward airspeed, so we can influence it a little bit by just kind of banking The hard part is keeping her out of the water. And this is exactly why I keep crashes turned off in this thing. All right, let's get some power. We're also checking that fuel gauge. You'll notice 2 of them are in the 12 o'clock position already. That's never good. That stall horn is just going to keep going off because we're below 150 knots right now. I have done this before, folks. I have gotten this thing in full VTOL. It's just very difficult to do. And especially on a small island such as this, that is the real challenge. It's trying to pull that off. So we're just going to work our way around the island here. And in fact, I'll go to the outside view so you can see it. Now it's at this point in time that you can also engage the co-pilot assists, and that will actually help you. So pretty much all you need to do is just work your main throttles, and the co-pilot assist in theory should work the other controls just to keep you all airborne long enough to land. Oh, don't start with me. Stall warning. Absolutely love what Active Sky is doing right now. That's just amazing. Couldn't ask for a moodier sky if I would have set it custom myself. But yeah, let's see if we can bring this bird down, because clearly I am not optimistic about our chances of surviving if I continue flying around like this, and especially with these VTOL engines on, running out of gas. Yeah, might be a good idea to find an airport and land. Hopefully we won't hit any trees this time. I'm curious to know your opinions on this bird. If you have already purchased it, how are you finding it? Have you figured out the whole secret to vertical landing, or have you done like I did and basically cleared out part of the forest for the people of Bora Bora? So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. I know a lot of people are saying Asobo's choices for local legends oftentimes don't make a lot of sense because it's not something that you would fly very often. And I agree, for the most part. Not everything is going to be everyone's cup of tea. But remember, this stuff is not mandatory. You don't have to get this. You could choose to pass on it and it'll be perfectly fine. You'll be okay. I'm going to give us some more flaps here just to keep our speed low and our pitch up. We're trimming down just a touch here. I've still got our nozzles set to the maximum, but because I am operating the main controls here, that is of course changing things. So you see all these levers are moving in tandem here. When we're in vertical mode, it goes to that, and it keeps it at full actual power. So we've got 100% power 100% of the time, and we're just basically changing like nozzle position as we move the controls there. You can see them right there. And that's how we're going to ride it down, is with the nozzle position. So we want to make sure that we're trim. We want to stay between like 7 and 10 for our trim. That'll give us a nice, slow, manageable speed. To get it into a hover, obviously we're going to do a little bit more work. But clearly I am not an expert on that just yet, so we're going to hold off on all of that. I'm going to bring the throttle down, which of course will bring the nose down a bit. and will get us in. Let's go ahead and put in that last notch of flaps. Flaps are now full, so that will give us our good approach speed. I'm going to trim us up a little more, kind of making sure that that pitch stays over 0. And of course the stall warning is going to complain again. Got to be Johnny on the spot with the brakes on this thing too. Alright, so we're just basically working the nozzles here to try and bring her down. We're staying roughly around between 50 and 60% nozzle, and then trying to manage our pitch to keep our airspeed decent enough to stay airborne. But right about here should do it, so I'm going to start pulling our power back. And we bounced. But we're down. We are down. Nose gear's down. I'm barely on the runway, but you know what? It's better than being over there, right? Woo! What a quirky bird. Like I said, I make no apologies for the flying quality of this thing. This is absolutely the strangest aircraft that I've ever had. But I love the heck out of it. Absolutely love the heck out of it. It is amazing. Alright, let's see if I can get this thing vertical here. Alright, I'm going to put parking brakes on. See if that helps us here. I don't know that it is. The engines are on, right? Yeah, I think they are. I think they are. Alright, so throttles to idle. And let's move these. It says our nozzles are at 90 right now. Do I need to flip one of the pilot assist? Yeah, let's do the hover assist thing. Alright, so turn that on. So the only thing I can think of is perhaps my wingtip engines are not quite on just yet. And actually, you know what? Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. There's no fuel. The engines aren't on. That's exactly what's happening. So now they should start spooling up. Okay, so mental note. Your fuel cutoff switch right there at the bottom. Make sure you turn those on. Also mental note. Make sure you do your checklist right. So this will give us power. This will definitely give us power. Okay, so the throttle is idle. And this is all the way up. So we want our nozzles down there until everything's ready to go. And we're going to do this Harrier style here. So our main thrust lever is in the idle position right now. As soon as that gets into the green, we're going to try and see if we can move the nozzles. And that should help us now. All right, here goes nothing. Again, I make no promises. There we go. Oh, she wants to get up. She wants to get up. Okay, she's up. Kinda. Kinda. I'm trimming her down here. Let's see what it looks like from the outside. Oh, and by the way, we do have a window on the bottom here that we can reference. All right, I'm going to see if I can bring her down. Hopefully not too hard and heavy. So basically, all I'm doing is just controlling nozzle position right now. I'm not even touching the main throttle, just to try and get her exactly where I would like to have her so that we can bring her down. And we're using our pitch controls here. So that's why we're kind of bobbling all over the place here. And of course we're going to land on the grass, but you know, it is what it is. You got to kind of think like a helicopter. You got to kind of think like a Harrier with this one. It's weird. There's no other way to put it. It's just weird. And all I'm doing is just jockeying my flap lever, which I'll remind you is just changing the nozzle position. I do have the parking brakes on, so assuming I can get us in the right spot here, we'll put down. And I'm just using gentle controls with the pitch. Not as much as like fingertip movements like I always say for helicopters. But yeah, it's kind of like that. All right, let's drop it like it's hot. We're down. Is that not nuts? Let's go ahead and turn off our VTOL engines. All we need to do is click this. And put the parking brakes back on. VTOL engines are now closed. Engines are now off. Good thing we actually remembered to turn on the fuel to the VTOL engines. Yeah. Folks, it's difficult coming up with videos like this because I try to cram so much in between work and actually doing the final recording that it's like invariably I forget some things, no matter how many times I practice it. But with that having been said, I do hope that you have enjoyed this look at the local Legends 15, the Dornier Do-31. It is a fabulous plane, and I'll be honest with you, I know a lot of people, it is probably not your cup of tea, but for someone like myself who absolutely loves the weird and unusual birds, especially stuff that can go VTOL, this one's right up my alley. I love it. Absolutely love it. So, as always, thank you for watching. This has been BelGeode. I have been flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and this has been the Inibuilds rendition of the Dornier Do-31, our local Legends for this month. It's available in the InSim Marketplace. The scenery that we are checking out is by Clifford. It is Clifford's Bora Bora scenery, and the link to that will be in the video description below. As always, if you enjoy what you've seen, please feel free to give me a like. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'm going to remind you once again, Flight Sim Expo is coming up really, really soon. It's going to be June 21st through the 23rd in Las Vegas. I think most of you have probably already gotten your tickets and sorted out your airfare and hotel. But if there are still those of you who are definitely still interested in going but haven't had the opportunity yet, registration is open. My link is in the video description below, so be sure to use it, click it, tell them BelGeode sent you, and they'll be like, oh Lord, not the purple hat guy again. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's at the Rio Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Alrighty folks, but that'll do it for me. So once again, thank you. I really do appreciate you sticking with me even when I do an Av Angel landing. Sorry, Av Angel, I couldn't resist. Alrighty, folks, I'll talk to you all later. Ciao.